Hello, welcome, Cabbage here. Let's talk about Sin Chronicle, Sega's latest big mobile game. Part of the reason behind making this video is to get ready for Sega's new mobile game, Error Game Reset. Part of the reasoning is also to diagnose the mobile game industry through the failure of Sin Chronicle, and consider if Error Game Reset or other games have what it takes to succeed. When I say failure, I mean that it quite clearly looks expensive to develop, and it shuts down after about a year of service, and got nowhere near completing even the first tower-type event. Just to say up front, I have never played the game. I've only collected info from YouTube and Twitter and App Store game reviews. Furthermore, I know nothing about the global version and how it is different from JP. Maybe it's better, I don't know. You can help me out in the comments if you like. So, I will not be showing any game footage, unfortunately. I'll just be showing this graphic. You can think of this as a radio show. First of all, Sega is not known for its mobile games. Chain Chronicle came out like 10 years ago and is a legit OG game, but besides that, nothing much has stuck. I've heard on more than one occasion that Sega shouldn't even try to make mobile games. Obviously, Sin Chronicle is meant to build on the legacy of Chain Chronicle, but it angered the community before even launching. In some pre-release promo video, they called Sin Chronicle a true RPG ... on mobile, and then everybody rolled their eyes at that. And here already we can talk about two interesting points about Japanese culture and the mobile game industry here. In Japan, the relationship between business and consumer involves a hierarchy, maybe different from a lot of the West, where consumers are above in status over companies or people that work at companies. And if the companies ever seem like they are cocky or looking down on the consumer, that is a big no-no, and it explains why we see developers of mobile games frequently apologize and engage in bots games or punishment games in order to re-establish that hierarchy. Sega saying their game was a true RPG on mobile was interpreted as cocky, and the reason for that leads us to our next point, and that is that even in Japan, where the population is more accustomed to mobile games and is more open to spending on them, they still believe in their heart of hearts that console games are the real deal, while mobile games are sort of like a tier below. And so to declare that they could release a true RPG on mobile just seemed impossible, and then that turned out to be true. So that was a PR thing, which is not the end of the world. But here, let's talk about a variety of problems post-launch, but they mostly spring from one core problem. The developers were out of touch and running the game like it was 8-10 years ago. Power creep exists in games, of course, but it also exists in a way in the mobile game industry. As the years have gone on, games have become more generous, with more quality of life updates more quickly. If a company is too stingy with handouts or rewards, or fixing clunky game experiences, users will be like, well, all of these other games are much more friendly to users, I'll just go play those. A game can have fun battle, an interesting world and story, great graphics and music, and cute girls, but a million games have all of that, so really what games are competing on is user-friendliness and generosity. So actually, we're not even going to talk about the front-facing aspects of the game, stuff like you would see in a trailer. We're going to talk about deep system stuff, like how certain structures in the game are set up, and then the developer's approach and attitude. First thing, we'll talk about how the game was kind of anti-Reset Marathon at launch. The Reset Marathon is where you install the game, pull the hatcher, if you don't get what you want, you uninstall and then reinstall, and then you repeat until you get what you want. There are of course some users that don't like this, there are some that don't do it, but it's pretty much understood that users love to do this in order to get an advantage. Some developers and publishers can be stubborn, however, and actively make it difficult to do the Reset Marathon. Maybe they'll only give you one 10-shot to start, or they'll make the tutorial take 40 minutes to complete before pulling, or they'll make the initial download gigantic, and users hate all of that. It feels like the developers are against them, and it can hurt a game's popularity and it can hurt sales. But there is an endless row of foolish mobile game corpses where they tried that stuff and died for it. If a mobile game now wants to succeed, having an easy, generous opening pull where maybe you don't even need to reinstall to do it over is the way to go. Next topic, related to that, is the Downloads Celebration campaign they did soon after launch, where they reached a certain landmark and then they gave everybody 3 10 shots. That sounds great, but by everybody, I mean only to the folks who started a new account after that campaign. So everyone who installed on launch didn't get it. That felt like a kick in the gut to the early adopters. It was thanks to them that the game reached that milestone, but they couldn't partake in the rewards. That was another sign that the developers were not taking care of the users. Next is about story. So the story in Sin Chronicle was a big factor, but amazingly they locked certain stories to banner units, meaning you can only see certain stories by getting those rare pulls. Of course, from the developer's point of view, this would encourage people to spend, but that's the opposite of how it usually is. Fate Grand Order is a great example of a story-centered game where they make the story available to everyone and then release characters from the story in the banner later, and then users, they'll take their interest in the characters from the story and then turn it into spending and pulls. And it's part of how Fate Grand Order is still going so strong and still regularly hitting top 10 sales every week. And then the banners and then the events that they were attached to them were too short. I heard that they were like a week long, which is not friendly to free-to-play and dolphins, and it's very much kind of targeted at whales. This also smacked of greed, along with these stories being tied to banner units. And then the last problem that we'll talk about here was one unique to the game. It was billed as a feature, but as you go through the game, you make certain story choices that you can never take back, and they shift the story, and then give you access to like different characters, and then cut you off from others. Now this is just like, say, Tactics Ogre, but the thing is, on console, you can play through, make choices, get an ending, and then you can say, let's start a new game, let's make different choices, let's get a different ending. That doesn't work on mobile. For one thing, the game doesn't end until end of service. For another thing, say you pick an arbitrary point 6 months later, and you start a new account then, you'll have missed out on all of the limited time events during that 6 months. And say you read reviews, and you see that going this one path, gets you stronger resources for your account, but you really want to see the story of the other path. What do you do in that situation? You could play 2 accounts at once, but that will require 2 devices and more time and attention, and yeah, I think we can see the problem of this system in the mobile game style. Judging by user reviews, the game was really good and well liked, but ultimately, it should have been a console game. Sin Chronicle was essentially an experiment to see if a console RPG could make it as a mobile game, which already would have been tough, but the poor handling by the developers made it worse, so we have a shutdown a year later. So that was Sin Chronicle. To zoom out and talk about mobile games in the big picture, in addition to not doing the things here, successful mobile games need to have 2 things. 1, sufficient content for free-to-play users, as far as gameplay and other content like story, and 2, sufficient reason for whales to spend. That typically comes from high-end content, often comes from something competitive like PvP, and they do that in order to pay the rent and subsidize the free-to-play users. And so from here we turn away from Sin Chronicle and towards Error Game Reset, but we could also apply what we learned here to any mobile game. And when we want to judge how successful a game will be, how long it will last, we don't want to look so much at character design, world design, battle design, etc. We want to look at if there's enough for both free-to-play and whales to enjoy, if there's generosity and user consideration to compete with other games, and if the game style is even right for the mobile platform. Okay, so I think that will be the last sort of pre-release Error Game Reset video that I will make. Let me know if I got anything wrong about Sin Chronicle. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again. Take care.